The entire globe is being gripped by a really bad case of war fever, Michael Snyder reports. Most of us just want to live in peace, but leaders all over the world are preparing for more war. In fact, at this point, it appears that the entire globe is being gripped by a really bad case of war fever. As I write this article, he says, the Economic Community of West African States is warning that it could invade the nation of Niger if coup leaders do not reinstate the President Mohamed Bazoum. Of course, the leaders of the coup do not intend to back down, and so there will probably be war, but that will be a relatively small conflict compared to others that are looming on the horizon. On Monday, we learned that over 3,000 U.S. troops have arrived in the Red Sea. More than that's, of course, between the Arab states and Israel and Egypt. More than 3,000 United States military personnel have arrived in the Red Sea aboard 2 warships, part of a beefing up response from Washington after tanker seizures by Iran, the U.S. Navy said Monday. The deployment adds to a growing U.S. military buildup in tense Gulf waterways, vital to the global oil trade, and led Tehran on Monday to accuse the U.S. of inflaming regional instability. This in part is part of an ongoing effort by the Biden administration to bolster the U.S. forces in the region, and it's hoped that a larger U.S. presence will deter Iran from taking control of any more internationally flagged ships. Their arrival followed a U.S. announcement last month it would deploy a destroyer, F-35 and F-16 warplanes along with the Amphibious Readiness Group Marine Expeditionary Unit to the Middle East to deter Iran from seizing ships in the Gulf. The U.S. military says Iran has either seized or attempted to take control of nearly 20 internationally flagged ships. That's a lot. That's a whole fleet in the region over the past 2 years, and the Biden White House wants to see more forces in the region to stand ready to engage Iran if required, as Breitbart News reports. Meanwhile, it's being reported that the city of Damascus, Syria, was just rocked by Israeli strikes. After weeks of relatively quiet, the Syrian capital Damascus rocked by Israeli missiles early Monday morning, resulting in, according to the state agency Sana, the attack also caused unspecified material damage, while multiple inbound projectiles were reportedly intercepted by Syrian air defense. Videos which emerged on the aftermath appear to show intercept explosions above the city in the overnight hours. Tensions in the Middle East have not been this high in decades, and a major war could erupt at literally any time. But I don't think that planners in the West are anticipating a major war in the Middle East this year. My personal opinion is that if a big move in the region is planned, it will be in 2024. Meanwhile, the much-hyped counteroffensive in Ukraine is not going very well. August 3 to 5, armed forces of Ukraine lost a lot, bringing Ukraine casualties to 45,000. The AFU has approximately 200,000 combat soldiers, 36 of which were trained at NATO bases like Grafenwohr in Germany in the past months. Writing on Russian Sputnik News, U.S. Major Scott Ritter called the Ukrainian attack on heavily defended Russian lines with inexperienced troops and no air support a massacre, with Ukrainians suffering losses at the rate of 10 to 1 compared to Russians, and Ritter called the road to Rabotino east of Zaporizhia a highway to hell, quote-unquote. Ritter is quite right. Ukrainian forces are just getting slaughtered by well-prepared Russian defenses, and more Ukrainians being sent there each passing day. This counteroffensive was supposed to be the campaign that turned the tide of the war, but instead it's the Russians that are actually advancing. Russia claims its troops advanced 3 kilometers, that's 2 miles, along the Kupiansk front in northeast Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry said it had improved its standing along the front line in the last 3 days and continued to repel Ukrainian counterattacks. Over the past 3 days, the advance of Russian troops amounted to 11 kilometers along the front and more than 3 kilometers deep in the enemy's defense, the ministry said. But instead of pushing for peace, The Biden administration continues to insist that we're going to pour more resources into this war for as long as it takes, and so both sides just continue to escalate matters. On the other side of the planet, the Chinese continue to prepare for an invasion of Taiwan. And once the Chinese do invade, the US and China will instantly be at war. Most Americans do not seem to understand how close we really are to such a scenario. The Chinese government is absolutely obsessed with reuniting with Taiwan, and an 8-part documentary was just released on Chinese television that's helping to mentally prepare the general public for the conflict that lies ahead. China has released a new documentary about the Army's preparation to attack Taiwan and showcasing soldiers pledging to give up their lives if needed as Beijing continues to ramp up its rhetoric against the self-ruled island. Chasing Dreams, quote-unquote, an 8-part docuseries aired by state broadcaster CCTV of China earlier this week to mark the People Liberation Army 96th anniversary, featuring military drills and testimonials by dozens of soldiers, of which several expressed their willingness to have a heroic death in the potential attack against Taiwan. This 8-part documentary would not be on state television if the central government did not want it there. In it, some members of the Chinese military expressed their intention to literally lay down their lives if that is what is necessary to take back Taiwan. If war broke out and the conditions were too difficult to safely remove the naval mines in actual combat, we would use our own bodies to clear a safe pathway for our landing forces, said Zhuo Feng, a frogman with the PLA Navy's Minesweeper unit, as he said in his testimonial. Li Peng, a pilot from Wang Hai Squadron under the PLA Air Force, echoed his sentiments, saying his fighter jet would be the last missile rushing towards the enemy in a real battle. He said, if I had used up all my ammunition. Do you think that most U.S. soldiers have the same level of devotion in this day and age? Ultimately, the U.S. military could find itself fighting both Russia and China at the same time, and that is why an incident that just occurred off the coast of Alaska is so chilling. 11 military vessels from China and Russia found operating near the Aleutian Islands last week were met by 4 U.S. Navy destroyers, Alaska's 2 U.S. senators said. The 2 Republican senators, Dan Sullivan and Lisa Murkowski, issued joint news release Saturday saying that they had been briefed about the operation. Murkowski said, "We have been in close contact with leadership from Alaska Command for several days now and received detailed classified briefings about the foreign vessels." The Biden administration has been endlessly provoking the Russians and the Chinese, and this has just driven them into each other's arms. And he said, before I end this article, I should also mention that the North Koreans as well, because they just threatened to annihilate us before the end of the century. North Korea's foreign minister this week vowed that the country would annihilate the United States, adding that the U.S. would be terminated this century. Should the U.S. choose to offend our republic, he said, we will annihilate them by using all our military power that we have gathered so far. The North Korean diplomat said in a statement Thursday, the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. Well, you know these people. They're always talking like that because of the fact they want to impress Kim Jong-un. Now, the Korean War in the last century marked the beginning of the downfall, he said, of the U.S. Now the 21st century would see the irrevocable termination of the U.S. The rulers of the U.S. are well advised to forget, on no account, the lessons of history. Now, we are certainly living during a time of wars and rumors of wars, and I'm entirely convinced that 2024 is going to be such an important turning point. If the American people truly understand the horrors that the coming wars will cause, there would be millions of people protesting in the streets right now, but they don't. Most of us just assume that our leaders know exactly what they're doing and have everything under control. Unfortunately, the exact opposite is actually happening. We're steamrolling towards a global conflict, and most global leaders do not even seem interested in talking about peace at this stage. So the unthinkable is rapidly approaching, and most people will be absolutely blindsided by the nightmarish events that are about to unfold on our planet. This is by Michael Snyder. He says about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, Commissions Earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so that you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my own articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you've not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. And this is on the Economic Collapse blog by Michael Snyder. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.